Chapter 805, Meeting Up. Inside the building of the Relic Search and Preservation Foundation, Audrey, whose thoughts were undergoing an upheaval, blinked. She took note of her body language and expressions as she drew a crimson moon on her chest in a half-genuine manner. She said with a sigh, "What a tragedy. I hope that their spirits can rest in peace." The reason she had guessed that the archaeological team had comprised of members of the psychology alchemists was that she had previously received a mission to help the organization obtain a notebook related to the 20-year war from Associate Professor Michelle. And this notebook belonged to the knight from Heartlark Village, Linda Lyra. Back then, Audrey had made a request to Mr. Fool and relied on magic mirror divination to determine the origins of the notebook. She discovered that it was deeply connected to the village that worshipped dragons. As she knew ahead of time that there was a mind dragon hiding within the sea of collective subconscious, she ultimately chose to hand over the notebook to the psychology alchemists in consideration of her lacking sequence and strength. That also meant that the psychology alchemists had quite a significant chance of locking onto Heartlark Village through the notebook before heading over to find their target. Another factor that Audrey used in her judgment was the strange mental illness that the archaeological team suffered. It had spread like a plague, causing the people to go mad in batches. In the real world, there was a probability that mental illnesses were hereditary, but it was almost impossible to be contagious. But in the mysterious world, in the world of the mind and consciousness, chaos and madness could be spread to others through spirit channeling, dreams, and the subconscious. And hidden in Heartlark Village was a mind dragon that had lived for years. The psychology alchemists had found Heartlark Village through the notebook, and the threatened mind dragon used this ingenious method to spread mental corruption. He might have achieved this through the sea of collective subconscious. The Beyonder world shore is dangerous. This small team must have been formed by a selection of Beyonders, but they ended their lives in such a simple and ridiculous manner. As Audrey thought about it, she was glad that she had made a sufficiently rational decision. She hadn't willfully used the knight's notebook to explore Heartlark Village. Otherwise, there would probably have been an addition name to the list of members who went mad. Thanks to Mr. Fool, thanks to the other members of the Tarot Club, thanks to Kalangos who previously infiltrated in disguise, they allowed me to still recognize the hidden dangers despite my lack of actual experience in the domain of mysticism. It made me sufficiently cautious. Audrey silently thought in gratitude. At that moment, her recalling her performance when she first joined the Tarot Club had made her wish to bury her head in her pillows to roar at herself. Audrey, you were that naive and immature back then. Thankfully, you met Mr. Fool. If it were any other secret existence, you would have long gone mad or turned into a monster. Mr. Fool is such a nice man. No, such a nice orthodox god. By the side, Associate Professor Michelle noticed that Audrey had been silent. He said with a heavy nod, "Yes, it truly is a tragedy that strikes one with fear. I only wish that the government has already handled the matter and prevented the contagious mental illness from becoming a plague. Don't worry, unless that mind dragon loses control and plans to challenge the three churches, there won't be any more victims of that mental illness." Audrey replied silently. From her point of view, the official Beyonders had already taken on the case. After all, a contagious mental illness was definitely going to be under the purview of the official Beyonders. Therefore, the dragon coat of arms in the glass case must have been determined to be fine before being donated to the foundation. The police department didn't have such authority. While Audrey felt pity for the archaeological team who were suspected to be psychology alchemists members, as though she had experienced the tragedy for herself, she was curious if the mind dragon remained in the vicinity of Heartlark Village. To hide in the sea of collective subconscious with one's actual body would probably make it difficult to be discovered. However, the three churches have a long history. In the fourth epoch, or even earlier, they must have had bouts with mind dragons, so perhaps they have the corresponding records about it. Besides, the psychology alchemists is in control of the spectator pathway and has the existence of high-sequence Beyonders. Their comprehension of the sea of collective subconscious can't be much weaker than the mind dragon. After suffering a terrible failure due to the lack of information, they will definitely send a very powerful team. Although that mind dragon was stronger than what the psychology alchemists expected, it probably wouldn't stay there to be discovered. It should have left. Audrey made an inference based on what she knew. She didn't have any thoughts of visiting Heartlark Village to figure out the truth, because she long knew that the present her lacked the strength to deal with the mind dragon. Her only intentions were to mention the matter at the next tarot club and see if the other members could provide any feedback or any valuable knowledge. For example, it might be that the mind dragon had entered the sea of collective subconscious because of the local worship of dragons, or it could be that the mind dragon's inhabitation of the sea of collective subconscious caused the villagers to dream of it, thus being subconsciously influenced and having the tradition of worshipping the dragon. On Friday afternoon, Klein received the invitation list for the ball tomorrow. He began to seriously memorize the topics he needed to discuss with different guests. When meeting Member of Parliament Macht, I need to make remarks about the recent good air in Backland and make a few jokes about the Lone Kingdom Imperial Science Institute. As Klein memorized each line, he suddenly heard stacked illusory pleas. A man, based on how long it's most likely Mr. Hanged Man. In thought, Klein put down the piece of paper in his hand and gulped down a mouthful of black tea before leaving the half-open room with the big balcony to head for the master bedroom's bathroom. He took 4 steps counterclockwise and went above the gray fog, and he discovered that it was indeed the Hanged Man. This man had requested the Honorable Fool to inform the world that he had arrived at the capital of the Rorstad Archipelago, City of Generosity, Bayam. He could head for the primitive island in 2 days after he replenished his supplies. He wanted the world to begin preparations so that they could meet in time. He also indicated that if he lacked the means to head for the primitive, he could arrange for the world to secretly board the Blue Avenger. Board the Blue Avenger and bring a bunch of sailors from the Church of Storms to the vicinity of the primitive island. How long can the Sanguine's anesthetic gas you bought from Emlyn last? Will there be enough time to explore? Klein thought for a moment and conjured the word Jayaman Sparrow, making him pray devoutly. There's no need to go through that much trouble. You should have freedom of movement in Bayam. Meet at the cemetery outside the city at midnight today. Before that, replenish your stores. Bayam in an inn. Alger frowned slightly after hearing the word Jayaman Sparrow's words. He did have freedom of movement in the City of Generosity. This was because the sailors were eager to head to places like the Red Theater. They were definitely not returning tonight, and after waking up in the day, it was almost certain that they would head to a casino to gamble to let themselves loose. It was to vent the repression and misery that resulted from drifting out at sea for extended periods of time. That also meant that even if Alger disappeared for a night and a day, no one would discover it. Is the world implying that we use this interval? That is indeed better than using the Sanguine's anesthetic gas. I've already used it twice, so who knows if someone is already suspicious about it and is waiting for his theory to be validated. But without a ship, how do we head for the primitive island? Oh, Leymano's travels. Miss Magician did mention that it has the beyonder power of teleportation. However, there's only one page, making it impossible for a return trip. Alger relied on his strong ability to connect matters to vaguely guess at Jayaman Sparrow's intent, but he believed that the necessary conditions were lacking. With these doubts in mind, he found his contact with the Resistance and replenished his storm charms that were made with tin. When it was 11 at night, Alger secretly left his inn and headed out of the city under the shadows. He wasn't worried that the sailors would discover his disappearance because he too had physical needs. It was possible that he was sleeping in a lady's bed in the Red Theater and was unwilling to return. And there were many such brothels in Bayam, with many prostitutes in existence. It was impossible to say that there was something wrong with him because he wasn't at the Red Theater. Once he left Bayam, Alger walked on a narrow road where horse carriages couldn't pass, as he headed for the mountainside of the mountain range beside the sea. Suddenly, his gaze froze as he noticed something. Under the crimson moonlight's illumination, the mountain that originally existed had vanished. And the area underneath, such as the piled stones, vegetation, and terrain, changed almost completely. Alger had come from the Resistance's private harbor earlier. He hadn't managed to pay close attention to the mountain, hence, he only noticed the abnormality at that moment. The mountain collapsed? It actually collapsed. Right, it was previously mentioned in the papers that Bayam encountered a shallow earthquake, with its might being focused in the mountain range outside the city. Also, the church's deacon said that Jayaman Sparrow nearly destroyed Bayam, and that matter had demigods involved. Both of them occurred during the same period. Could it be caused by Jayaman Sparrow? He instigated a demigod-level battle, and he managed to successfully escape while killing Admiral of Blood. Alger's pupils dilated as his footsteps slowed down to a halt. He suddenly understood why the Church of Storms had placed great importance on Jayaman Sparrow, and why he had a bounty worth as much as 50,000 pounds. In the undamaged cemetery up ahead, a cold wind blew across it and towards Alger in the silent night. It made him tremble involuntarily. At that moment, Alger's heart stirred as he turned his head to look right. Underneath a giant tree, a figure quickly outlined itself in the shade. This figure had his hand on his top hat while he slowly looked up, revealing a thin face and cut features. The emotionless dark brown eyes were none other than Jayaman Sparrow S.